Welcome back. So this is episode 2, and we're going to go through today is a masterclass in chest and triceps. Now, you may be wondering why I'm going to give a masterclass in chest and triceps, considering that's probably some of my weakest body parts. But that's exactly why I'm going to give you a masterclass, because I've actually had to go away and learn about exercise selection, tempos, form, execution, so many things that I didn't have to do for my naturally stronger body parts. Something like legs, I've always had very strong legs, so it's not something I've had to really go away and think about execution, form, and exercise selection. I've always had big legs, and then when I trained them super hard, they just grew, okay? So my natural ability to contract that muscle has always been there, whereas my chest and triceps, it hasn't, okay? So I've had to develop my own skills and method over the last 15 years to actually bring up that body part. So with chest and triceps, the big game changer with me is kind of going back to basics, going through all my form, slowing the movement down, and actually getting a decent contraction that I can feel. Pre-workout selection today, slightly earlier in the day, so we're using Pre-Stim Pro, not the Plus version. I prefer the Pro when I'm training earlier because I want the additional hit of caffeine. And then to volumize my weaker body parts, we're always using Pre-Pump Plus. I'm not taking these now because I've already taken them about 45 minutes ago. With these pre-workouts, I always say take them about 45 minutes before the workout. So have your pre-workout meal around about 2 hours before the workout, let that fully digest, then 45 minutes before the workout, then load in the pre-workouts. You don't want to be taking it directly before the workout because it'll peak when you get to the mid to the end of the workout, okay? You want it kicking in ideally right at the start of the workout so it can sustain you throughout the whole workout. Okay, intra-workout, one of the big performance drivers, especially in the rebound phase. So I'm having 30 grams of Carb Plus. Now I could push this slightly higher because obviously we're pushing the calories up, but at the minute my hunger's pretty damn high. So I'd rather have the extra calories from food as opposed to powder, but it's still important to have at least 30 grams for where I am at the minute to boost performance. Then we've got 25 grams of essential amino acids, 10 grams of creatine, and 10 grams of electrolytes for extra hydration. So we're gonna mix that together now, and then we're gonna use this during the workout. So with chest, I always start with a fly movement. I don't really treat it as a pre-exhaust movement, more just a isolation exercise just to engage the muscle. Now, because I struggle to really feel my chest, especially if I go straight onto a press, I always have to get some type of fly movement in there. Not necessarily heavy, but like I said, so I can really connect with the chest. So when I move onto a press movement, there's actually some intent there and I can feel the chest engage. If I just press with brute force, it's just gonna hit my front delts. So I always do 2, 3, maybe even 4 sets of flies just to warm it up first, get it engaged, then I can move on to the presses. Okay, this is officially exercise number 1. We don't really count the flies as an exercise, more of a warm-up. So I love an old school movement. I love the incline barbell press, but this is one I have to be really specific on when it comes to the tempo and the rep range, essentially. If I go too heavy, like I said, I'm just gonna end up taxing my front delts. I've done that for years when I first started out, just trying to bench and incline bench as much as I could, and all that happened was my front delts grow. So what I have to really do is really slow down the tempo, little pause at the bottom, press up. Unfortunately, you're not going to see any crazy weight being moved today. It's not one of those episodes, but you are going to see perfect technique, perfect tempo, and perfect execution. And that's what you need to grow your weaker body parts. Before you start loading it up with stupid amounts of weight and just trying to move it from A to B, you've got to remember, we're not weightlifters, we're bodybuilders. So we're just trying to make the movement as hard as possible and as taxing as possible on that muscle. We're going to be doing 2 working sets on this today. Again, because it's the first week into the Rebound series. So I'm not as dehydrated or depleted as I normally would be from a show, because normally I'll do a show, I'll do pharmaceutical diuretics, bit heavy on the AI, so I have to be a little bit careful post-show. All my injuries have come post-show. As I said in the last episode, what happens is when you're filled up with glycogen on that rebound, your muscles feel nice and strong, but the tendons and ligaments always lagging behind a bit. So you get in the gym, you feel strong, you are strong, but then the weak link in the chain is always the tendon and ligament. Trust me from experience, when you get back into the gym, just slowly build up with the weight. Don't go crazy with volume. That's something that can increase with the food amounts. So start with bare minimal volume and then we can creep up. So we're gonna do 2 working sets of 8 to 10 on this, then move on to the next exercise. 3, 2, 1, yep. Yeah, that's my bar. Yep. Yeah, I had surgery on my hip there. Yeah. I tore it in 2015, a week after a show, on a hack squat. Then I turned pro in 2019, delayed the operation, and then I had the operation the exact same day, on the same month as when I tore it. And it took me about 2 years to rehab after that. It was anterior superior labral tear, so that was an old school Watson hack squat we used to have. I said if I turn pro, I'll get my hip fixed. So I trained for 4 years with like impeded movement. Yeah.
Yeah, come on.
Yep. Yeah. I've got this programmed into a lot of my clients' plans, and they send me their videos sometimes, and the big mistake I see on this one is kind of coming down too fast and then kind of bouncing the weight back up. So I recommend to anyone doing this exercise, or any of my clients, come down with a nice, slow, controlled negative, pause, take the static out of it, then press up, just engaging your chest, trying to keep everything out of the movement. Now, when you first do this, you are gonna have to drop the weight, and that's gonna hurt your ego, okay? But just know the most important thing is the contraction, okay? Just because it's a free weight barbell movement doesn't mean we're just trying to move as much load as possible. Yeah, it looks cool for the gram, but so does having a big chest. And if you're a bodybuilder, having a big chest is much more important. Exercise number 2. So we got incline dumbbell press. Now, if you notice on this one, the incline is slightly lower. On the incline bench, it's around about 30 degrees. This is more, well, exactly 15. So I'm always trying to prioritize the upper chest. If you look at the anatomy of the chest, it's naturally thinner at the top and kind of slopes down. So as anyone who's trying to improve their physique, you always want to try and fill out that upper chest. It looks more impressive and it gives you that 3D look. It's when people go too heavy on dumbbells, they're trying to stabilize it too much. So I'll stick to 3 sets of 12 to 15 in the rep range. Reason being, you can stabilize it quite comfortably and you actually can focus on the contraction. If you do 6 reps on a dumbbell press, for the most part, I'd say 90% of people are not going to get the full benefit of the exercise. So exercise number 3, which is the standing Arsenal press. Heavy bit of kit, this one. Now, I don't mind going slightly heavier on this and reducing the rep range a little bit. It's not like a free weight movement where you've got to stabilize it, so you have the stability there already. And if you can lock into the muscle, you're quite comfortably moving the 6 to 10 rep range. At this point as well, I'm a little bit fatigued, so I really like the loaded stretch, kind of like the strength curve on this machine. So I'll come down, hold it at the loaded stretch, a couple of seconds, power out, 2 working sets, 8 to 10 reps, job done. I'm not going beyond failure on any of my exercises. So like I said, the first week into the rebound, where you're training, always hold back a little bit. You're at such a high risk of injury. So if you notice, I'm always kind of tinkering around, maybe 1 rep shy of failure, no force reps, no drop sets, just kind of hitting what I can do on that day, being smart with the load and not putting myself at high risk of injury. Back to cable flies, but this time we're actually doing it as a working exercise. So at the first, well, technically exercise, but not exercise, activation movement, it was literally just to engage the muscle and get it fired up. Now we're going back to it. I'm just trying to use it as a proper exercise, getting a decent contraction and just pumping the chest full of blood. And with this exercise, because it's more of a pump movement, we're going 3 sets of 15, keeping the rest periods at minimal, around 30 to 45 seconds. You don't need a lot of rest between the cable fly. It's not that taxing. I just want to keep that blood forced in the muscle, which Pre-Pump Plus does a great job of. Okay, so first exercise for triceps is this attachment, kind of like a rope, but got a little bit of slings on it. Now I like starting with this because I've had previous issues with my elbows, and generally it feels quite good warming up, trying to fire up the triceps, getting a really good contraction, almost kicking it down by the side of me, really taking advantage of that short range of motion. 3 sets for 15 reps. Again, it's triceps, so I'm keeping the rest period nice and short. It's not a big muscle, so it does need a ton of recovery between sets. Tricep movement number 2. Same attachment, but this time we're going overhead. Really focus on the stretch part of the movement here. So you notice I'll come back, hold it for a couple of seconds, get a nice deep stretch, fire forward, kick out at the end, get a nice quick contraction, come back again. And then again, 3 sets of 15 reps, keeping the rest periods nice and short and just pumping the tricep with as much blood as possible. Okay, one big game changer that's been for my triceps, well actually arms in general, biceps as well, is to completely forget about the load. Okay, I spent so many years trying to chase certain loads of arms, and all that happened is I caused ligament and tendon damage, which then had a knock-on effect into my other movements like back and chest. So I noticed as soon as I dropped the weight, just went for pure stretch and contraction, my arms started to grow and I could actually build up the volume without having any knock-on effect on my joints. Okay, so that wraps up chest and triceps. So I'm currently training chest and triceps twice a week. For me, 9 to 10 sets of chest isn't high volume. I'm quite a high volume trainer as it is. But for me, in relevance to myself and my training, it's moderately low. So we've done about 9 to 10 sets of chest and 6 sets of triceps. So that'll be hit again on the Monday. Today's the Thursday, with just different types of movements on chest and triceps. And then I'm going to slowly build up the volume as we move through, as the calories increase and we see what we're doing with the performance enhancers as well. So that wraps up the first workout of the Rebound series. Then we're going to follow on to reviewing my blood work and seeing if there's any improvements we need to make there. Yeah, you guys will follow along and see my methods and my approach. Second part of the episode, we are going to cover my blood work. So the blood work has returned. To be honest, I was actually expecting it to be a little bit worse than it was. And then I was kind of going to go into how to correct it, but never complaining when my blood work's good. Obviously, I take really good care of my health, try and negate any of the potential risks when I do take anabolics. And what I've come back with is a really good set of bloods, but we're going to run through them anyway. Now, if you check back on my previous YouTube, about 2 years ago, I went through in a full in-depth overview of every single blood marker and what it means and what it does essentially. So that's quite a long video, probably about 20 minutes long, where I go through every marker. This one's going to be short and sweet. I'm just going to go through the main ones we kind of look at from a bodybuilding standpoint, ones that can be potentially affected and how to adjust it moving forward. So we're going to start with the full blood count, which is the red blood cells. Everything's fully in check. I don't have to bloodlet at all, which I do on a regular basis, kind of every 3 months. Hematocrit, hemoglobin's all in a good spot. Mean cell volume slightly high, but nothing to worry about at all. Again, it's only about 2 points above what it should be, so we've got no problems there. White blood cells, all in check. Now, the only thing I want to touch on with the white blood cells is the neutrophils. For those of you who don't know, neutrophils essentially, in the most simple term, is like the Pac-Man in the bloodstream. Okay, so what it does, it comes along and engulfs anything it seems to be a threat to the body. Now, when we're putting exogenous hormones in, what happens is the hormone comes in the body, the neutrophils will then try and attack it because obviously it sees it's a foreign substance, and that will show up on your neutrophils. So if your neutrophils are ever raised and you're on anabolics, that's the reason why. It's nothing to worry about, like the neutrophils can't degrade the hormone, so it's not gonna make the hormone any less effective. It's just letting you know the body is aware of it and it's essentially trying to attack it as it's a foreign substance. Moving down. So this is the one I actually thought was gonna be slightly raised because this is a very common one for bodybuilders to see elevation when we're looking at sodium, urea, and creatinine, okay? So if creatinine and urea, essentially they are normally quite raised if you take creatine, if you have muscle mass and you have a high protein diet and obviously you train really hard. So it's usual to see these slightly above range, okay? It's not supposed to be crazy, you know, we're shot way above the range, but to see them elevated is very normal. Again, if you train hard, you have a high protein diet and you take supplements, it will be effective. Okay, but mine's actually in a perfect spot, so I'm very happy about that. Then moving down, we have the EGFR, which is the estimated glomerular filtration rate. This is part of the kidneys we really want to pay attention to because this can show any like acute kidney damage. So what you don't want to do is have your urea out, your creatine out, and your EGFR. Okay, so EGFR, in my opinion, is one of the most important kidney markers we want to pay attention to. You don't want to be below 60, mine's at 81, so it's in a good spot. Moving on to liver. Now the ALT is an interesting one because this can show essentially liver damage. Problem is it doesn't differentiate between the enzymes released from the liver and enzymes released from muscle damage, which the ALT will track both of them. So generally, as a rule, I know it says below 55, but we don't really pay much attention to anything under 100 if you're someone who trains super hard, because like I said, you can get a skewed reading from your muscles releasing the enzyme, which will reflect on the ALT. The one we want to pay attention to and cross-reference to is the GGT, okay? So that's a very important one, because if there is raised liver enzymes in the ALT, then, and you look at your GGT and that's way out of range, then the chances are the damage is actually coming from the liver as opposed to the muscle. And then apart from that, total proteins, all good, and everything else, not deficient in vitamin D. Then moving down to cholesterol, again, this is another one that is affected by anabolics and bodybuilding in general. So anabolics will generally suppress your HDL, which is your good cholesterol. So what we'll typically see is your HDL come down and your LDL raise. Now, if I'm honest, I actually thought my cholesterol would be a little bit worse. My LDL is right on the cusp and my HDL is slightly under, okay? So ideally, obviously, I want to be slightly higher, above 1 with my HDL, and I want to be below 3 with my LDL. Now, it's been a lot worse than that, but these TRT and cruise phases is the time you really need to drive up your HDL and bring down your LDL, so it puts you in a good position that when you do go back on cycle, you have plenty of room to maneuver, to let the cholesterol skew out a little bit. Again, mine's not too worrying at all, but I definitely can drive that HDL marker up a little bit, and I can definitely pull the LDL down a little bit by using more supplementation, heart stack, and a lot of the other products from the supplement lead range will definitely help with that. Plus, dropping down to a TRT phase or cruise dose phase will obviously reduce the amount of anabolics, which will reduce the amount the cholesterol is affected. Okay, moving on to the next page. You can see something's insanely raised, which is my CK levels. This is creatine kinase. That is a very, very high marking, but basically it indicates muscle damage. Now, obviously I've been training super, super hard up until this point. Normally in a prep, what happens is the last 10 days to a week, you start pulling back on training. So this will generally reduce. I didn't actually do it this time because obviously I wasn't going into a full prep. So I trained to failure all the way up until the fat loss phase. Okay, so that CK marker is up around about 2000, which is actually indicating a huge amount of probably overtraining at this point, a lot of stimulus to the body, that trauma to the body. So I definitely want to bring that down, but to really get a good grasp on whether, how much muscle damage being occurred from training, you would probably take a week off training completely, let your body rest, then have that retested and then see where it falls then. Because like I said, if you train super hard, you're going beyond failure, you're doing a high amount of volume, which I was, then that market is always going to be raised. Down to CRP, which is C-reactive protein, which is inflammation in the body. Mine's under 1, which is exactly where it should be because you want to be 5 or under, and mine's at 1, so we're all good there. Iron, UIBC is fine. Total iron binding compound is fine. No problem with the transferrin saturation, and my folate's fine as well. And one of the last ones, but definitely not least, is the hormones. So obviously here we're going to see some fluctuations and changes. So I want to basically pay attention mainly to, you can see the active B12, which I'm way above, thyroid stimulating hormone, which is all in check, 3T4, which is all in check. Now, if you look at LH and FSH, so basically this is the body's own way of producing testosterone. So LH is luteinizing hormone, FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. Now, if these were in range, it would show you that my body's producing its own testosterone from the testicles. FSH and my LH is basically flatline, but my testosterone's in range, which is showing you it's obviously coming from exogenous sources. Now, if anyone ever says they're natural and their testosterone's way above normal and their LH and FSH are out, then they're lying, okay? Because the testosterone has got to be coming from somewhere. And if it's not being produced systemically by testicles, or for women, obviously is more systemic production, then they are not natural, okay? It's coming from an exogenous source. Moving down to estradiol, another interesting one. So obviously my estradiol is very high. Well, not very high, but the limit is, from what the labs determined to be in range, is up to 162. Mine's at 350. Now, I actually purposely try and keep my estrogen slightly higher. Not in a fat loss phase towards the end because I want to reduce the estrogen, because I want it to come down a little bit, because obviously it gives you more of a drier, harder look when you have suppressed estrogen. But interestingly enough, when you're going in a gaining phase, I actually want my estrogen to be a good, decent amount higher than what the recommended dose is, for what I find is a good point where I don't get side effects. And the main reason being, because I'm using growth hormone, estrogen helps the production of growth hormone turn into IGF-1. So if you have slightly higher estrogen, you are going to get more out of the growth hormone. So the growth hormone goes in your body, and then you're going to produce more IGF-1, which is the main reason you actually take growth hormone for. So although I will try and bring my estrogen down just a touch, because honestly, I'm not getting any sides from it, I still want to keep it at a moderately high range because I want more conversion from growth hormone to IGF-1. So it's another little point. If you want to get the most out of your growth hormone, find your estrogen where you're going to get no sides ideally, but the highest you can keep it to a point where you can convert more growth hormone to IGF-1 if you're using growth hormone. Progesterone's fine. Prolactin, again, that's another one that's fairly high, but that can be hormone related. It can be lack of sleep. It can be stress. A very easy fix for that, I can take vitamin B6. So what I'll do is take vitamin B6 in the morning, vitamin B6 in the afternoon. And then also I can take the sleep stack, which also has vitamin B6 in it. Then I can get that retested and see where it is. But remember guys, blood work is just a snapshot in time of where you are. So I can get that tested in a couple of days and the prolactin could come down just from general life stresses, okay? I am gonna take the vitamin B6 anyway, just to reduce it. But for the most part, you've got to remember, especially in hormones, they can fluctuate almost on a day-to-day basis. Testosterone, like I said, I dropped down to a TRT dose, so you can see my testosterone is in range at 26. It goes from about 8 to about 30, so I'm kind of on the higher end of testosterone. Okay, I could potentially bump that up a little bit because I probably want to go into more of a cruise dose, which will be slightly in a super physiological range. And then if you look at SHBG, which is sexual hormone binding globulin, and what that is essentially is something that binds to the hormone to make it inactive, okay? So we actually purposely want this low. So you can see my SHBG is low, but that is intentional because I want my testosterone to be utilized better. If your SHBG is high, then the problem with that is more testosterone gets bound up and the cell can't use it efficiently, okay? So when you've got your testosterone high, you also want your SHBG low, which makes me laugh with some people just get their testosterone tested on its own, just isolated testosterone. And they're like, oh, my testosterone's great. I'm like, okay, great. What about your SHBG? What about your free androgen index? What about your estrogen? You know, so you have to take onto this account. Knowing your testosterone on its own is essentially useless, especially if something like your SHBG is going to be super high. And then moving down to the free androgen index, obviously I had Bolderone and Winstrol in there, so that's obviously going to come across in that reading too. Then cortisol, perfectly in range. And the very last one, which is PSA, which is prostate-specific antigen, and this is a marker of potential prostate cancer. Doesn't always mean prostate cancer, but it can be a good indication of whether you're having signs of it, and mine's fully in range. As you can see there, guys, my hormone profile from an organ standpoint is pretty damn good. Kidneys are good, liver's good, cholesterol, a little bit of work, but nothing to really worry about. Something that's going to come up organically as I move through the TRT cruise phase and add a little bit more supplements in. The main one we want to focus on is bringing my prolactin down, bringing my estrogen down just a little bit, nothing too crazy, because like I said, I want that IGF conversion. And apart from that, we're all good. I'll cover throughout the series like what other big problems come up in people's blood work. You've got to remember the drugs I've used this time is nowhere near as harsh as what would be in like a real professional IFBB state cycle, and you know what are the extent I'm willing to go to. So this is a more moderate version, hence why the blood work's in a better place. My blood work's never in a really bad place, but it's been more skewed than that previously. But if you take the right precautions with health supplements, doing your cardio, and don't be stupid with the dose, you'd be surprised with how much you can get away with when it comes to blood work. Next episode, we're going to cover nutrition, the do's and don'ts, the big common problem I see people making a rebound phase, and on the flip side, people being too conservative, which is my case. Not as common, but it definitely does happen for people that try and stay lean. But I'm going to cover that all in the next episode, all my food, how I adjust my calories to match up with my training.